We don't even have physical contact anymore. We don't look at each other because of technology. We barely see each other face to face. So we're missing that connection also. Make that connection. Give back to someone. Let that person cut in line. Let that person in traffic. And I'm telling you, it just keeps, it'll flow, and you'll feel better for it.
That there's a dimension about who we are, that as a result of giving, that's the only way we make that connection. That's why my favorite book says, the greatest among you will be your servant. A servant is a giver.
I think service is misunderstood in our culture because we confuse service with servitude or servant, which to the ego is offensive, it's demeaning, it's like but there is a saying, and I always have used it, to service to rule. To be able to be of genuine service really allows you to feel that your energy and your efforts make a difference.
September 2001, I was in New York. I awoke to the news, and my friend that I was staying with, Doug, we went to the roof of his apartment building and watched the World Trade Center crumble. And both of us simultaneously looked at each other and said, we have to go down there right now. We were literally running against the current of people that were rushing out of the scene. We were running into the scene. Doug works in the media, so he had media badges that allowed us to get beyond barricades that were just being set up by local police. There was still no support system for these firefighters and these rescue workers. So it became a real necessity that we find food and water really fast. So we actually, with the support of a couple of NYPD police officers, we started looting all the nearby delis and supermarkets. And we had turkey meats, and we had the finest of New York delis meats and everything. After a while, it became clear that there was just one food that all the rescue workers wanted, and that was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I later realized that it was because it was comfort food. And it was the first area where they actually did the first roll call. The fire chief stood up on top of one of the crushed fire trucks. There were probably 400 names that he called off, and at least half of them were not present. As the reality set in with all of the firefighters around, that they were not present because they were not alive. They were in the building. They started to literally crumble like dominoes all around us. They fell to their knees, they sat on curbs, and these big hardened men were just in tears. The earth movers came in to clear the way for all of the rescue vehicles, and Wall Street was lined with fine automobiles, so the only way to move them was to literally push them over with these earth movers. They just flipped the cars one at a time, all the way down the road, flipping cars out of the way. And I watched these material items go from being this beautiful car that I was drilling over to just being trash in seconds. We watched them, we just stood there, you know, like 12 guys going, oh my God, how can they do that? But then it became really clear to me that it's like, that was so irrelevant to the task of finding people alive that all of the material world was just garbage at that point. It didn't matter. I had suited up, you know, rescue workers' uniform, basically, with the respirator and everything on. And this actually ended up becoming my pass to get into the ground zero, where it was nothing but qualified rescue workers. And here I was, just a civilian with really no qualification to be there. So the first victim that was found was this little man in a suit, and he had been completely crushed and disfigured under a fire truck. And I stood there looking at him and imagining what his story must have been, that he likely hid under the thing that felt the most secure, like a fire truck. Do you know what I mean? He probably crawled under that fire truck as debris was falling, only to be crushed under that fire truck when that entire rig was crushed upon him. And so that was really the first sobering moment of, wow, okay, this is what we're here for, and this is what we're going to witness, and am I up for it? And you know, I didn't really even have to think about it. It was just a yes.
We have to understand that when we perform service for others, we're not really doing that. I mean, it looks like in the illusion that we're doing that we are serving others, but the truth is there's no one else to serve but the self. There's nothing going on in the world except self-service.
The more you give, the more you receive. But the desire to give is not strictly for getting in return. You know, there's not this intellectual thought of, okay, well, I'm going to give to you, you, and you, because if I do, then maybe I'll get something. Most of us operate in that mode already.
Moses didn't do that. He just gave and received and served.
We want to give as God gives, without expectations, without wanting anything in return, just to connect with another person, to serve in the grandest way.
Greatness is your capacity and your willingness to be of service. Service to what? Service to love, service to peace, service to beauty, service to God, service to joy.
I think that when we do that, when we take our attention off all of our problems and all of our circumstances, and we put it on somebody else, it's the thought of doing that that allows us to lose track of ourselves and lose track of our problems, and that's an act of creation.
Recently, I was inspired by my own son, Bo, who was having a bar mitzvah, and the rabbi explained to him that the mitzvah was really in the stretch, going beyond what he felt comfortable doing.
What kind of challenges do you feel like you faced and that you had to overcome to do this great mitzvah?
I'm giving away all my money, so that's always hard.
What kind of project are you going to do?
I'm raising money to build a school in a poor part of Uganda.
He decided that he would build a school.
An entire school?
Yeah, a 7-room schoolhouse.
And donate 100% of his money.
So Moses did exactly the same thing you're doing, Bo. He left his comfort zone to do something good for people that desperately needed it.
The village where Bo's project is going to be built is called Chikoiro. And the difference between a child going to school and not going to school is really the difference between life and death for many children.
It says, Bo, I've decided to put my money towards the school.
We've received money from over 500 people.
That's great. How old is she?
She's only 12. That's weird.
No, I think that's beautiful.
I know, that's awesome.
They were just ecstatic, and they really got that this was a child helping children.
How does it feel to be a philanthropist?
What's a philanthropist?
This has been a tremendous opportunity, not just for the children of Chikoiro, but for kids in the U.S. to get the idea that there's more that they can do.
There are some people that don't have the capacity to receive the good that wants to come into their life, and they end up becoming martyrs. They end up burning themselves out because they give, but they never replenish themselves through being available to the presence, expressing through them through receptivity.
The couples who proceed slowly in therapy, the couples who seem to never get there, and no matter what happens in the relationship, they just don't, quote, really improve, have what we call a defense against receiving. They have no receptors for letting stuff in, not only letting love in, but letting compliments in, letting positive statements in, letting appreciation in.
To surrender yourself enough to be able to receive, first from God, the Holy Spirit, and then from those around you, I think is one of the most sacred acts that we perform.
The complete whole state is an individual that gives with ease and with grace. They're here to give, to share their gifts, their time, their talents, their capacities, while at the same time they're in tune with the fundamental order of existence, their real being, and they're receptive to this flow through them. They can receive love. They can receive intuitive hits. They can receive wisdom and guidance. They can receive the beauty that is everywhere. So there's a complete cycle, and ultimately giving and receiving are one.
Most of us have heard prophets and sages and enlightened beings say that we're all one. But we look out at the world and we see separation everywhere. So how can that be true? Does that mean that I'm one with Jack the Ripper as well as Mother Teresa? Does that mean that I'm one with you? Are these just airy-fairy ideas? Or could this be the next step in all of us realizing that we're actually an embodiment of God?
The fundamental principle that you find encoded in all major religions, all authentic spiritual paths, is this spiritual idea called oneness. That we are at one with life, we're at one with the presence of God, we're at one with each other.
We find that in all the traditions. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one presence, one power. The Atman, the Buddha nature, the Christed one. It's in quantum physics. Rupert Sheldrake, the unified field, one presence everywhere.
This oftentimes doesn't seem to square with physical evidence. primarily because the average individual sees the world through the filter of a sense of separation. They see the world through their senses.